It's been said that all is the world a stage and we are merely players. To paraphrase a moderately known playwright, Bill, what's his name? Not only Shakespeare, but philosophers, sages, authors, contemporary and old, have spoken to this topic throughout the year, positing that we are engaged in the game of life in an illusory tableau, that we act out our daily dramas on the stage that is our life in the world, that our human experience is actually a complete unreality. That life in the world are projections on a screen, not unlike the one here in this room, and we are the image on that veil, simply faint reflections of the source, the one true light, and there's plenty of that here today, and in the hearts in the room, and those of you joining us. The one true light. In our metaphor today, it's the projector overhead. It is that light, the source, the spiritual realm that we consider the true reality. And blinded by this light, we are dazed and confused and feeling a dissonance between the reality that we think to experience here in our life and the illusion that it truly is, confusing that with the spiritual truth of all that is. We live in this paradox of our humanness and our divine nature. And our struggles arise because now that we're here, oh boy, are we really invested in this physical world, and the limitations that it sets up for us seem so very real because we are forgetting the truth of a greater reality. I've been wandering around in metaphysics for so long and pondering this question of what's real and what's illusion, what's this or what's that, and I no longer can separate truly if my thinking has arisen from the canon of Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of our Unity movement, some other author or philosopher that I've read, or if now what I am about to share with you today is just simply the gospel according to Margie. That's very likely true. The Hindu teaching says that this world is Maya, an illusion. Indeed, it is a world of limitation and division under this theory. It's a world of relativity and duality. And certainly with our body, we experience limitation. In this life, we imagine we are separate from that which we created, that we are separate from that which created us, that we are living in a world defined by relativity, by contrast and duality, and we buy completely into this illusion. And because in the Hindu tradition, God is known as complete unity, the only way God can show up for us in this kapakahi world, this crazy life, is as separate and distinct and different from God's own creations, which are all separate and distinct in physical form. The idea of separation is perhaps our first and largest illusion, and it begets all the rest of our faulty thinking, the unreality that we have miscreated, and then our suffering comes from our misperceptions of this greater truth of spiritual reality, the greater truth of the infinite, and then the illusion of the finite world, believing it to be real. In the last couple of months, in our country, in our community, and certainly in our homes, in the midst of a pandemic that is here and now present and not some experience that's taking place halfway around the world, it feels like this is very real. Would you agree with that? That we are having a life of limitation in this experience. And that's our human gig in this life. We have made the unreal, our illusions about life and the world, we have made that what we think is reality. Our misperceptions make those ideas solid. And when that untruth is solid in our mind and in our observation, well, then we get to live those experiences. That is, until we unreel the unreal. Now, I grew up in north central Washington. It's a locale that is full of rivers and lakes, and I spent time fishing in a whole bunch of them. From the time I was 4, I was very good at wheedling to go on my dad's fishing trips with his buddies. I don't know what my mom was thinking, because these were raucous, early dawn, early pre-dawn to late at night events in which the guys bet on who would haul in the largest fish for the day. We would be on the lake in a boat before first light, and we would spend all day fishing, and then we'd spend the evening cleaning fish and grilling them on a campfire and enjoying them before they treated me to s'mores and we finally went home. I developed 2 really good talents as an angler at a young age. I was able to avoid adherence to the first rule of fishing, which is you had to clean all that you caught. Oh no, never have cleaned a fish in my life except those that I unwrap from the fish market and clean at my kitchen sink. But I was also, interestingly enough, always the one who took home the largest fished pool. I think I had a great bunch of my dad's buddies who were really Hanai uncles for me in my childhood. Essentially, grandparents in a way, some of the older gentlemen, when my own grandparents had passed away before I was born. But these were trolling fishing experiences, sitting in a small boat, chug, chug, chug with the motor, totally disturbing the peace of the dawn light beginning to show on the lake. What I really developed appreciation for later on in my fishing experience is that experience of casting a line into the lake. You can feel the weight of the reel perfectly balanced in your hand because the handle of the pole extends backward along your forearm, and the length of the pole extends out. And you've spent time thinking about the perfect tackle for today's intended catch. And so there you are, standing on your dock, or maybe on a point of land on your favorite lake, on the shore. And you get ready and take your stance, and you swing that pole back over your shoulder, and with perfect timing, there's a fish waiting for that hook. And what happens is the further that line is unreeled, the greater the potential to bring home the prize fish. And you remember, I always caught the prize fish. What we are unreeling for the prize in our life is we are claiming the coherence of this infinite field of spirit and the truth of that reality with the story of our humanness. This life that we're living in a physical body, coherence between the playing field of life with its seeming boundaries and conditions and rules and limitations, and the unlimited expression of our divine nature that resides at the heart of us and animates all that we do. Oh, I thought we had slides, Diana. No. Okay. As spiritual beings, we seek to live a life beyond the illusions that we have conjured. The Maya is of our own design. We have, with our thoughts and our misapplication of spiritual principles, misapplication of higher truths, we have built the castle on a faulty foundation. And the errors at the beginning of our journey, the beginning of our thinking processes, have compounded as we move through daily life. Our thinking patterns become our behavior patterns, and pretty soon we are deep in BS, our belief systems. This is continually guiding us in error through life, assuming that this experience we're having and everything around us is real. Now, if you studied physics, you know that we can touch it, we can knock on it, I could lean on this to support myself, and yet it is 99% air with some apparently very active molecules vibrating together that create form and shape. And so when you can realize that, you can begin to imagine that we are indeed living in an illusion that we have made real, that we have all agreed to as a real situation. We must remember that we do not observe nature as it actually exists, but nature exposed to our methods of perception. The theories determine what we can or cannot observe. Albert Einstein said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. So as we are contending with the BS we have created, our belief systems, we can be aware that this is probably not the guidance system we would want installed on our Lexus or our Prius, and that guiding our life, when our BS leads us to enough discomfort, then we seek answers. People show up at Unity when they're in deep spiritual discomfort, seeking a transformative remedy. From any source, we might choose to find something to help that divine discontent. We begin or expand our spiritual practices in an effort to escape the Maya that is around us, the illusion. Maybe these days we engage in the Q process. Shameless plug. The link is right on our website for information about it. We've just completed a training yesterday. There will no doubt be another one scheduled sometime in the summer. The Q process is a journey of healing our shadow self so that we can liberate our most noble self and eliminate the errors of our thought, our action, and our belief systems so that we can clear away BS that is not working in our life. We seek to live beyond the self-imposed limitations and half-truths of the Maya, the illusion, so that we can press outward into the world, so that we can express as spirit, as our unlimited potential, as the infinite field, simply particles of God itself clothed in human form. That's who we are. And remembering that in this experience, the truth is there is only oneness. Oneness with self, divine and human. Oneness with the nature of God. Oneness with the whole of the universe. The journey of life is a mental one which is taking place in the sea of illusion. This is author Neville Goddard, a late 1800s metaphysician, New Thought teacher, speaker, author. And so because we're in this mental sea of illusion, it's a very good news piece that we have made up our minds that this is truth. And when we have made up our minds, the even better news is that we have the capacity to change them. And as soon as we change our mind, we begin to reshape the experience that we're having or our relationship to the human experience and finding the ability to center in that greater truth. We are unreeling the unreal and coming to freedom. It begins in our mind, our consciousness, and we might say that consciousness rules. Now, consciousness is a spectrum of a journey, and we are all someplace in that journey. And here's more good news. You govern your surroundings by the nature of what is taking place in your consciousness. So this is an attribute that we want to guard jealously with truth rather than illusion. And we ask ourselves, what's the governing BS that's taking place in the consciousness? You can only respond to illusions, unreeling them, based on where you are in this consciousness spectrum. Is your belief system your own personal pile of BS, one of fear, worry, anxiousness, not enough, where you wear the persona of safety and protectiveness as you move through life? That's this end of the consciousness spectrum. And it's governed by our five senses. and it has the limitations incumbent with taking in the data of life, analyzing it, and responding to the world by the means of this often faulty data. This is the world of, if I can't taste it, see it, feel it, touch it, hear it, or eat it and pass it through my body, then it ain't real. This is the neighborhood where fear and its companions direct our thoughts, our actions, and we accumulate the daily pile of BS. And at the other end of the spectrum is the fully awakened, individualized consciousness. That consciousness that knows its unlimited potential, that realizes it is the creative force in its life and the world at large. And when we approach this consciousness in unity, we know that we have arrived in the full expression of our Christ nature, Christ consciousness. This is the perfect template for the human heart and mind and spirit design. It wasn't reserved just to be expressed in Jesus over 2,000 years ago, but is a pattern by which we can be guided, to which we can aspire to fully express our own divine self. It's also known as the Buddha nature, the divine self, in Hinduism, the Atman. This spectrum, and where we each land in consciousness, how we operate in consciousness, equips us to relate either with ease or discomfort to this idea of this world as illusion, and the spiritual truth and infinite presence is the deep truth of life. It allows us to navigate this illusory game that we are playing as humans. Now, where we are on the spectrum, you caught maybe that I didn't say where we wish we are, or where we think we are, or where the one who loves us most told us yesterday to boost us up, where they think we are. No. Where we operationally are in our consciousness, which admittedly is a little bit of ebb and flow and how we're reacting, that's what allows us to balance this paradox of, yes, I'm a human having a spiritual experience, to see this world and act as if it's real, but know that I'm engaged in a play act, a drama, the game I have chosen to execute with this physical body. It's never a static position. We slide around with the intent on our best days to move to, as close as we can, or to at least hold status in that shining light of wholeness that is the truth of who we have come here to be. The master and the student on the journey to mastery knows that illusions are illusions, decides why they are there, and then consciously creates what will be experienced within the self through the illusions. This is a quote from Neil Donald Walsh from Conversations with God. So if life is consciousness and we're moving through it, let us do so with awareness that this is the game we have chosen to play, that we are here with a script that we have written ourselves, and that we have the capacity for endless rewrites and new decisions and new creation to be the whole individual that we intend to be. We move through this with the power of mastery, another word for the spiritual power this month of spiritual power, the ability to create with our intention. That our intention, our focused thought, moves us to action, and our repeated focused thought creates a vibration in the world and in the universe that draws out the experience we hope to see. If you want to experience some focused intention, a couple of shameless plugs today. Mondays with Margie on our eCampus, Monday evening, is an hour-long practice of creative, prayerful intention, moving on specific aspects of life that come into the room in that evening, and then we invest our energy together and collaborate on focused, visualized prayer. It's a very powerful experience because this is where we are choosing how we will be, that we will live from the truth of our holy self. So back to Neale Donald Walsch. When facing any life experience, there is a formula, a process through which you may choose to move through mastery. Simply make these following statements. Affirmations of truth that allows your mind to expand from this world of limitation into a greater reality. The first one, nothing in my world is real. When we can let go of our confined ideas, the truth that is only partial, when we can expand that, we can begin to have mastery. We can begin to live as our most noble self. The second statement, the meaning of everything is the meaning I give it. Someone said, we humans are simply meaning-making machines, and we do it really well. We do it expertly. I can narrate a story about anything going on in my life. In fact, I can probably narrate a better story about what I see is going on in your life and tell you how you ought to engage with that. We humans, and I'll raise my hand at it, really good with that. The third statement that will allow us to move towards spiritual freedom is, I am who I say I am, and my experience is what I say it is. These three powerful statements can be a guide for how to work with the illusions of life. When we pull ourselves back from taking everything for granted, assuming what we see is what is true, then we are headed in the journey of mastery. We are unreeling the unreal. You know, I fished when I was young, and I also learned to play cards. Many of my friends loved to play hearts. I never got that game, and I never enjoyed it, and I never wanted to play it. Maybe because the person who taught me came from the perspective that he wanted me to play so that he had somebody to beat. And he always wanted to win. He had a focus. He didn't mind fudging a little for the benefit of winning. But in his teaching me how to play this card game, he didn't really equip me to excel, to have strategy, but rather to be fodder in his game of winning. I also learned canasta as a child. My Auntie Jo, my Hanai mom, taught her kids and me, all of us together, and after school or on a summer day, we'd sit at the kitchen table. You know, the Formica one with the metal frame chairs that were covered in naga hide. And we would play canasta. When I could barely hold a canasta hand that developed in my hands to effectively play. But Auntie Jo taught us to play with joy, to remember that it was simply a recreation practice, but a mental one that could develop us with clarity and focus and the ability to think steps ahead. And she did that with great love because she wanted not only to have partners to play with and maybe occasionally to win, but I suspect she wanted much more for us to win because I never remember Auntie Jo taking the canasta. Now, in life, what would you choose for a coach? Would you choose the one that teaches you from the limitation, from the need to be right, to control, to win at all costs, no matter what? Or would you choose the coach, the one to learn from, who teaches you to play wisely and strategically, teaches you the higher skills of the game that are involved, and challenges you to develop your own abilities? And reminds you always to stay connected to joy and laughter. Isn't that the coach you'd want in this game of life? This is the inner source of infinite intelligence and wisdom available to us all. It is the spirit of wholeness. It is the whole spirit of God. For me, it's canasta instead of hearts. It's the power of love over fear. For you, may you always choose to unreel the power of love fully so that it may set you free. Aloha.